What if the line between good and evil wasn't between people, but inside you? He didn't kill for money. Not for rage. Not even for revenge. This is not just a story about crime. It's about the punishment no courtroom can deliver. The kind that crawls into your conscience and never leaves. This is Crime and Punishment, a descent into the human soul, where logic breaks, love bleeds, and guilt becomes your god. He walks through the alleys of St. Petersburg like a shadow among ghosts. Pale, ragged, starving not just for food but for meaning. His name is Rodion Romanovich Raskolnikov, a former student, now buried under debt, despair, and something far darker, an idea. He believes some people are not bound by ordinary rules. That the world is divided into two kinds of people, the ordinary who must obey and the extraordinary who may transgress. Napoleon, Caesar. Great men who commit violence not for greed but for purpose. And Raskolnikov asks himself, what if I am one of them? His theory is not born from power but from pain. He watches his mother sacrifice everything for him. His sister, Dunya, is about to marry a wealthy, arrogant man, all to keep him afloat. And above it all hangs the pawnbroker, old, cruel, rich. A woman who profits off the poor and offers nothing back. Raskolnikov doesn't just want to kill her. He wants to prove something, to the world, to himself. That he has the courage to step beyond morality. That he is not just a failed student in a cold attic, but something greater. Something dangerous. He writes an article. He sketches a plan. And as the days blur together in sweat and silence, the idea hardens like ice in his chest. He is no longer thinking like a man. He is thinking like a weapon. But something trembles beneath his logic, a quiet voice. He visits the destitute Marmeladov and hears tales of poverty, of humiliation, of a daughter named Sonia who sells her body to feed her family. It shakes him. Briefly. But not enough. He still clings to the theory. If a vile woman dies and good comes from it, isn't that justice? He picks up an axe. He tells himself it's philosophical. That history will understand. That the guilt will be fleeting. But in Dostoevsky's world, no sin is ever clean. No theory is ever safe. And what Raskolnikov doesn't yet know is this. You can try to murder a human being. But the soul has a way of haunting back. It was supposed to be clean. Quick. Just one life, for a greater good. Raskolnikov had planned every detail. He wrapped the axe inside a cloth, tucked it into his coat, stuffed his pockets with a fake item, a cigarette case made to look valuable. The old pawnbroker Alyona Ivanovna would believe it. She always did. Greed made her predictable. He climbed the stairs, sweating despite the chill. His heart drummed against his ribs, but his face, blank, almost serene. When she opened the door, he smiled thinly. I brought something to pawn, he said. She turned, squinted, held out her hand. He handed her the fake cigarette case, wrapped tightly in paper and twine. As expected, she turned away, muttering, and began to untie it on the table. And that's when he raised the axe. In a single motion, he brought it down. The blade struck the back of her head. A dull, sickening sound. She gasped, not a scream, just breath. Her body crumpled forward, twitched. He struck again, harder, until her skull cracked. And then, silence, but not peace. He stood over her, panting. Sweat soaked through his shirt. The axe hung at his side, dripping. He should have felt triumphant, enlightened. But all he felt was heat and nausea. The room spun. The air tasted metallic. Then, a knock. The door creaked open. Lizaveta, her younger sister, gentle, innocent, holding a basket. She saw the blood, saw the axe, froze. Raskolnikov didn't think. He reacted. One blow, across the temple. She collapsed like a rag doll. No theory had prepared him for that. 2 murders now. Not one. No philosophy, no logic. Just blood. Just horror. He searched for valuables, but his hands trembled. The earrings, the chains, they all blurred together. He stuffed them in his pocket, but none of it mattered. Nothing mattered anymore. Every tick of the clock screamed. Every floorboard creaked like a judge rising. He fled. Carefully. Avoided witnesses. Hid the blood-stained axe in the building's courtyard. Buried the stolen goods under a rock, like a man burying his own soul. Back in his room, he collapsed. Fever took him. He drifted for days, mumbling, hallucinating, sweating. Dreams of children, horses, judgment. The guilt didn't arrive like a storm. It dripped in. Quiet. Constant. And in those days of delirium, Raskolnikov realized. He didn't kill ideas. He killed people. He survived. Not the law. Not the police. But the guilt. Raskolnikov wasn't arrested. No one came. The world moved on as if nothing had happened. But inside his mind, something had shattered, and the shards cut deeper each day. He wandered the streets of St. Petersburg like a ghost in his own body. His skin burned. His thoughts looped. At night, he saw blood in his dreams. During the day, he heard the creak of the floorboards. Every sound was her gasp. Every shadow, her sister's eyes. He visited the scene again like a moth circling the flame. Walked past the building. Watched the new tenants. Listened to conversations about the murders as if they weren't his. He wasn't being hunted, but he was haunted. And then came Porfiry Petrovich, the police investigator. Calm, witty, always smiling. He didn't accuse, he provoked. Asked strange questions. Spoke in circles. Suggested the killer might be a student, perhaps, with theories about extraordinary men. Porfiry wasn't looking for evidence. He was watching Raskolnikov's soul unravel. At the same time, another presence entered his life, Sonya Marmeladov, the daughter of a drunk, forced into prostitution to support her family. A girl who had nothing except faith. She read the Bible, spoke softly, carried shame with dignity. And yet, when Raskolnikov looked at her, he saw something terrifying: mercy. She didn't condemn him, didn't preach. She listened. He found himself drawn to her, not for love but for absolution. She represented something he couldn't understand, belief in goodness even after hell. But Raskolnikov clung to his pride, his intellect. He still told himself it was all a test, a moral experiment gone slightly wrong. He still dreamed of being above guilt, above God. And yet, the dreams kept coming. He saw children beaten in the street, horses whipped to death by laughing men. He screamed in his sleep. He raved. He nearly confessed, not to clear his name but to clear his soul. He was no longer hiding from the police. He was hiding from himself. The man who wanted to become extraordinary now couldn't look in a mirror, because every time he did, he saw the axe. There are prisons made of stone, and then there are prisons made of silence. Raskolnikov was trapped in the second. He still walked the streets, still spoke with people. But inside he was locked in a cage of his own making. Every conversation felt hollow. Every step, heavier. He wasn't hiding anymore. He was sinking. Porfiry kept circling him. No handcuffs. No charges. Just words. It's mind games. You're sick, he said once. Not with madness, but with conscience. He even offered Raskolnikov a chance to confess, to lighten the burden. But Raskolnikov laughed it off. Pride still held him like chains. And yet, something had changed. Sonya saw it. In his eyes. In the way his voice trembled when no one was looking. He would visit her in the dim corners of her world, the bare room, the candlelight, the quiet faith. And slowly the wall between them began to crack. One night he broke. He told her everything. The murder. The plan. The blood. The horror. He didn't cry. He didn't beg. He just told the truth, cold and clear, like he was finally speaking after years underwater. Sonya didn't recoil. She didn't scream. She wept. Not for the crime, but for the soul that had been drowning. She told him to go to the crossroads. To kneel. To kiss the earth and tell the world, I am a murderer. Not because the law needed it. Because the soul did. He resisted. Of course he did. The idea of bowing, of begging, shattered every idea he'd built his life upon. But Sonya, quiet, gentle Sonya, didn't argue. She gave him a simple gift. A wooden cross. Not to wear. To carry. The next day he walked to the square. He didn't kneel. Not yet. But he stood there, breathing, trembling, holding that cross in his hand like it weighed more than the axe ever did. That was the moment the theory finally died. Not with a bang, but with a whisper. I am not extraordinary. He confessed. Not in a courtroom. Not to a jury. But to the world, and to himself. I am a murderer. And in that moment Raskolnikov's punishment truly began. He was sentenced to 8 years of hard labor in Siberia. Cold winds. Gray skies. Endless silence. Not chains around his wrists but chains in his soul. The other prisoners mocked him, avoided him. He was strange to them, educated, aloof, distant. Still clinging to some invisible pride. He didn't regret the crime. Not yet. He still told himself it was a mistake in execution, not morality. That the idea was sound, only the result unfortunate. He couldn't even grieve the old woman. He saw her as a statistic, not a life. But Sonia followed him. Across thousands of miles, through snow and suffering she came. She settled nearby, took humble work, visited him, waited for him, not as a savior but as a witness. The woman who had once sold her body for bread now became the anchor of his redemption. She brought him books, scripture, stories of suffering and resurrection. But she didn't preach. She simply sat with him, listened, remained. And slowly the ice began to melt. One spring morning, something inside Raskolnikov cracked. He looked at her, really looked, and saw not pity but love. Not judgment but grace. He cried. Not for her. For himself. For what he had become. For what he had destroyed. That day he bent to the ground and kissed the earth outside the prison barracks. Not for theatrics. But because he needed to feel something real. Something alive. That was the beginning. Redemption in Dostoevsky's world is not dramatic. It's quiet. Painful. Earned drop by drop. There are no miracles. No sudden light from the sky. But there is change. In the final pages, Raskolnikov begins to dream again, not of glory, not of power, but of humanity. He sees the people around him as souls, not symbols. He begins to live not as an idea, but as a man. He still wears the cross Sonia gave him. Not as proof of faith, but as a reminder. Redemption is not in theory. It's in love, in suffering, and in the choice to change, even when the world says you can't.
Thank you for watching. If this story made you feel something, not just fear, but the sorrow of being unseen, share it. Let this tale live on, not as horror, but as a reflection. Leave a comment with the part that struck you most. And if you believe stories like this deserve to be remembered, subscribe, and help us bring forgotten legends back to life.